stepped into the building and studied her surroundings. Yes, she had been here once, but this place had been vastly different then. She had the strange feeling that while everything around her had changed and evolved like the seasons, she had not. She was the same as she had been centuries ago, drawn from very old wind and cold constellations. But she was not here to fall prey to what had been. Enver narrowed her sight and stepped forward, searching for the door. Part 1. The Magic Still Gathers. 1. A Grave Encounter. Spring had at last found the city of Oath, but even the flood of sunshine couldn't melt the frost in Iris Winnow's bones. She knew someone was following her as she walked through the bustle of Broad Street, over tram tracks and scuffed cobblestones. She resisted the temptation to glance behind, instead forcing her hands into the pockets of her trench coat as she stepped over a row of weeds blooming from the pavement cracks. The coat was only 3 days old and still smelled like the store Iris had bought it from, a hint of rose perfume and complimentary black tea and polished leather brogues, and the days were becoming too warm to truly need it on her walks to and from work. But she found that she liked to have the coat belted at her waist, as if it were armour. She shivered as she wove through a crowd gathered at a bakery door, hoping the person on her trail would lose sight of her in the tumult of people purchasing their morning buns. She wondered if it was Forrest following her. The image instantly made her feel better, and then profoundly worse. He had done such a thing before, back in Avalon Bluff. In fact, he had been watching her for days, waiting for the right moment to appear, and it still made her feel ill to remember. Iris couldn't resist a moment longer. She cast a glance over her shoulder, the wind pulling a few tendrils of hair across her face. There was no sight of her older brother, but then again, he was no longer the swift-laughing, affectionate person he had been before he enlisted for Enver's cause. No, the war had left its marks on him, had taught him how to maneuver in the trenches and fire a gun and sneak across Dead Man's Zone into enemy territory. The war had deeply wounded him, and if Forrest was following her this morning, then it meant he still doubted her. He continued to believe she would run, leaving him and Oath behind without a word of farewell. "I want you to trust me, Forrest." Iris swallowed and hurried on her way. She passed the building she had once worked in, where the Oath Gazette sat alight on the 5th floor, the place where she had first met Roman and thought him an arrogant upper-class snob. The place where her words had first found their place in the newspaper, where she had discovered the thrill of reporting. Iris walked past those heavy glass doors, tracing the ring on her 4th finger. She turned onto a quieter side street, listening for the sound of footfalls behind her. There was too much din from the tram bells and the hawkers on the street corners, though, and she dared to take a shortcut through an alley. It was a strange, haphazard path that most vehicles couldn't navigate without knocking a side mirror loose. A cobbled street where magic could still be felt when passing over certain thresholds, or glancing at the shine of windows, or stepping through a shadow that never faded, no matter how brilliant the sun burned overhead. But Iris paused when she saw words painted in bold red paint on a white brick wall. "Gods belong in their graves." It wasn't the first time she had come across that statement. Last week, she had seen it painted on the side of a cathedral and on the library doors. The words were always in red, bright as blood, and often followed by a single name, Enver. No one had seen the goddess in weeks. She no longer sang people to war, inspiring them to enlist and fight. Sometimes Iris wondered if Enver was even in the city, although others claimed they spotted the goddess from time to time. As for who was painting this sinister phrase all throughout town, Iris could only wonder. But it seemed to be a group of people in Oath who wanted no living divines in Cambria, including Dacre. With a shiver, Iris continued on her way. She was almost to the ink-ridden Tribune when she allowed herself a final glance behind.